everybody who can make it today. And like I just said, I'll be recording this session and we'll post it in the org. So if anybody, any of your colleagues that you know of couldn't make it and are interested in watching this at a later date, I will have this posted in the org shortly after our meeting today. So I'm Sarah Profit. I am the instructional designer that has been managing this project for COMM102. And we are working, Josh, Rocky, and I have been working on this course for quite a while now. It's been a lot of fun. We've gone through lots of hard work. He has been great to work with, so I'm excited for him to be able to show you the finished product today. So basically, at Ivy Tech, our initiative here is to, as much as possible, create digital courses and have digital content for our students and with very rich multimedia included in our courses. So for that reason, we've been using and utilizing our new program, IncludeEd. And for this course, we've been able to integrate all of those digital resources that you will see today. And we'll get into detail with what those pieces are and how things are going to work for students and what all that will look like. So stay tuned for that. So before I jump in head first to talk about the SAM, just a couple housekeeping items. This is a little bit different than Collaborate. I know you overheard Tony and I talking about this GoToMeeting format. GoToMeeting is a program we are piloting right now, mainly due to lots of technical issues we've had with Blackboard Collaborate, which some of you have probably experienced. So this is what we've been using for our pilot and have had great success so far. So I'm happy that we were able to use this program today. And hopefully you didn't have any trouble getting in and figuring things out. It seems to be pretty intuitive. So what I will ask of you today is if you would like to use your microphone, you're more than willing to do that. That's not a problem at all. I would say if somebody is talking and you have a question, we don't have the same capability in this GoToMeeting format to raise hands and things like that. So you can always type in the chat. I'm going to show you real quickly. I'm typing to the entire audience that I have a question. I will be monitoring, Josh will be monitoring, the chat box will both be keeping an eye on it. So if anybody has comments or things, we will definitely bring those up. And if at any time we have the possibility of a decision that needs to be made or a type of vote that we need to do, I will just ask that you type yes or no in the chat box so we can take a quick tally of those types of things. So we'll definitely be utilizing the chat box today. So if you can just very quickly make sure you know where that is and how to type in there, that would be great. And then if you are not talking, it would be great if you could just mute your microphone to make sure there's no background noise. And you can do that on your phone. If you've called in, you can just mute it like you normally would. Or if you are on a headset on your computer, there's a very tiny little microphone button up towards the top next to the webcam. You should see a little green microphone icon. If you click that button, it will mute your microphone. So that's it for housekeeping. If you are looking here, you should see my screen right now. I'm sharing the agenda. I'm going to jump right into the session alignment matrix. And I think somebody might need to mute. I hear a little bit of background noise. The session alignment matrix was the very first milestone that you saw come across your email for COMM102. That was what Josh and I had worked on, just creating a course blueprint is kind of what we refer to that as. It's just a gigantic blueprint, but it definitely encapsulates the entire course in that one very quick guide there that was sent to you. So he had basically taken the core objectives and then had built out his competencies from the core objectives, and the competencies are our measurable skills that go along with each objective and what the student would need to demonstrate in order to be successful in meeting that objective. So you saw all of those come across, and that's really our first milestone that we have to hit before doing anything major in the course. And so that one usually takes quite a while to get through all of that planning. So the role, obviously what Josh was doing, he's our subject matter expert, so he's, all the content decisions and what we're using as far as from the publisher, test questions, and all of those things involving content, he's been able to go through and disseminate and decide what will work best for the course. And then my role is basically to monitor his progress with building out the course and then focusing in on the design of the course and how well we're going to meet our students and help them to be successful. And then I'm obviously keeping up on his deadlines, and the milestones are how we do that. And then you as committee members are very helpful feedback guides, and so every time I'm kind of pinging you on a milestone, we're always looking for any type of feedback. You are all enrolled as students in the course, so at any time you can jump in there and look around and kind of see what's going on from a student perspective. If something seems to be not clear or things like that, we're always looking for just somebody to go through with a fine-tooth comb and see if there's anything missing or anything that was maybe is not as clear as it could be. So we definitely value your feedback and appreciate all those who were able to jump in the course and look around. So for the course showcase today, I'm going to turn it over to Josh here in just a minute, and he's going to talk about the syllabus file and go through that. We'll talk about the text and everything in there that we have as far as policies and things like that. And then he also has the course calendar to share with you. So I'm going to, Josh, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay.
And as soon as you're ready, you can share the syllabus file.
Is that coming up now for everybody then? Are you seeing my screen?
I can see Blackboard.
Okay. So we want to start with the syllabus, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. We'll start with the syllabus, and feel free to jump in if you have questions. I believe all of you on here have been around for a little bit. I don't see too many new names anyway, which is fine. We got some consistency on the committee here. So with that in mind, I think all of you have seen an online syllabus before. You should be familiar with some of the basics. It's not going to look that different. Obviously, there's a format that's followed for all online courses, and this one certainly does follow that. You'll see a lot of very familiar information here on the first page, and on through. The course outline should look very familiar to you. It's straight off of the course outline record from the website, and so it's the most current version that we have right now. There was a question early on about whether or not the globalization information had been included in the course learning objectives. The answer to that is not yet, because those course learning objectives have not been changed as of yet, and they may be for the fall semester. I'm not sure if they'll get in by then or not. If they are, we can update that. That's a fairly simple update. But as of right now, we are working with the course outline record that is active at this very moment and during this semester. So that's why you don't see the globalization stuff in there, and it's the current course outline record. So moving down here a little bit to the required text and materials. We are using the Floyd second edition, so we'll be moving into the second edition. I believe there was some discussion about the third edition, whether or not it would be available, and the information we get from the publisher is that the third edition won't be available until January of, I think they said 2016. I don't remember. It was a ways out yet. They were making some fairly significant adjustments to the text, and so the second edition is going to be valid for a while, and so that's where we're at with it. We will be using the Include Ed program, so the students will have a textbook provided them in digital format, and in a few minutes here, I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah so she can show you how students would access the digital book. They'll also have one that's fully digital through Connect, the McGraw-Hill program Connect, and then they'll also have access to a digital textbook that they can access offline if they wish through what's called Vital Source. So they'll have a couple different ways to access the textbook in digital form. I believe they also have some options. If they want to purchase a copy, they can do that at a certain cost, but it won't be what's included in the cost of tuition through the Include Ed program are the digital forms of the book. So we've made use of that, and we're going to make use of some other publisher materials as well. But they will have access to the digital book through Connect and through Vital Source as well. So it should be the second edition of the Floyd textbook that we've been using. So I'm just going to scroll through a lot of this. This is a very standard Ivy Tech syllabus, especially for online courses. Has some information on due dates, attendance policy. Again, we're all fairly experienced instructors, I think, so we've all seen a lot of this. It is an online distance course. That shouldn't surprise anybody if they're signing up for this. They're signing up for an online course. So, let's see. I'll get down to something that's different from the standard here. Obviously, again, there's a section in here where we left in both messages and email. It'll be up to the instructor to choose which one they want to use regularly and remove the other one, as is noted there in the red. They'll pick either messages or email and then remove the one they're not going to be using. Okay, so now we get down to assignments and grading. You can see there how is my grade calculated. You can see what's going to be included there. 12 discussion boards, one for each chapter. Those are worth 20 points each for a total of 240 points. The Learn Smart activities, which again we'll get into and show you what those are, but it's an adaptive learning tool that is provided in the publisher materials. It's online through Connect, and will guide students through a series of questions. We'll have one of those for each chapter, one set of those for each chapter. They're worth 20 points as well, and those are graded essentially on participation in a sense. I mean, if they get in and do, it's not graded on a right-wrong basis like a test would be or something like that. If they get in and they work all the way through the program for that particular chapter and they participate fully in all of that, then they would get all 20 points. If not, then the program, the Learn Smart program, will automatically determine, it's proportional. So if you did 75% of the work, then you'll get 15 points or 75% of the points that are available for that particular session. And so it's relative to how much work they do within that and how much of that they complete. That is automatically indicated in gradebook. The instructor doesn't have to go in and grade any of that. It's automatically connected to the gradebook in Blackboard and will automatically be updated as the student participates in that. At the end of that session, it will automatically go into the gradebook. And again, we will look specifically at the Learn Smart activities here in a few minutes as well. There are a series of 7 reflection papers. These are just short, kind of 1 to 2 page papers based on what that particular chapter is talking about. For those, as you'll see when we get into the course, the instructor will have a couple different options to choose from. They'll pick one of those options and have all of their students do the paper on the same topic. But it's just a way for students to get a little more in-depth. The exams don't include, the exams are all true, false, and multiple choice, so they don't include any kind of in-depth application stuff. So this is kind of a substitute for that. So that's one reason for doing a series of reflection papers, is because I think it's important to all of us that we have students demonstrate that they understand how to apply these concepts in a real-world type situation. So that's one purpose for the reflection papers. The other is that it supports the learning objective for this course that talks about writing. There are a couple of larger papers, the intercultural experience paper and the movie analysis paper, that also support that, but in a smaller way, these reflection papers are designed to fit into that and kind of taking the place of the blog or the journals as we might have in some of our face-to-face classes. This is just an alternative format for presenting that kind of information and getting that kind of information from the students. As you can see, I already mentioned there are 2 papers, 2 larger papers for the class. On the intercultural experience paper, which we've slimmed that assignment down so that it is just the paper, and not necessarily an interview, but it's go out and experience something and then report back. Again, some of the feedback we heard from instructors and that I heard from instructors as I asked people about it is, kind of streamlining that, simplifying that assignment, both for the sake of the students and the instructors. And we felt like that, I felt like that retained the heart of that assignment and also supported the writing aspect of the course, which is stated in the course objectives. So trying to stick closely to those things. So, and also the movie analysis paper, again, a pretty standard assignment, I think, in a lot of our face-to-face classes, also something that's kind of a carryover from the last iteration of this class, so carrying that over as well. And then there are 3 exams. The exams are not comprehensive. The first exam covers chapters 1 through 4. Second exam will be chapters 5, 6, 7, 8. And then the last exam is chapters 9 through 12. Each of them worth 75 points. And we'll take a look at those as we get into the course, but as I mentioned, they're true-false, multiple choice exams with a time limit. They're not proctored or anything like that, but there are 75 items, and I think it's a 75-minute time limit, so students aren't going to have time to look up every answer, but they'll have time. If they know the material, they should be okay on these exams. If they don't know the material, then they're going to struggle, just like they would in any class. But so there are 3 exams to check understanding of those things as well. So, and the grade then is out of a total of 1,000 points. We can get into each of these kind of assignments and the details of the assignments and things as we get into the course, when we get into actually getting into Blackboard. But are there any questions about how we structure the points? Or I keep saying we. The we is actually I. So every time I say we, it's probably me. I made these decisions, so I don't want you to yell at Sarah or anything. But for this kind of stuff. But are there any questions that people had about the way we structured, or I structured the assignments and the point structure here? Okay. Good. I see just one comment from Beth, so that's good too. So, okay. And again, we'll look at each of these as we get into it. There is an assignment summary, as you can see here in the syllabus, and that just kind of describes in a brief way what each of these assignments are. There are 12 discussion boards, 1 for each chapter. Same with the Learn Smart activities. The reflection paper is there for different sessions, and we can get in. And again, you've had access to the course, so hopefully you've been in and looked and seen what those are. We can take a look at some examples, though, of what the reflection paper looks like and how it's structured. It gives us a brief information about the 2 papers and the exams as well. So, and down below, we're back to the standard online syllabus stuff for additional support, talking about disability support and those kinds of things. So, questions about the syllabus before we get into some other stuff? Okay. Sarah, should we go to the calendar next, or are we hopping into Blackboard?
That's fine. We can
Maybe
go
I
to the
can look at the
calendar.
agenda, I guess, and see where we're supposed to be going.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. You can jump into
Okay.
the calendar so we can at least see the structure of the course, and then we'll jump in and
Sure.
look at each specific item.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty straightforward, actually, the structure of the course. The chapters go straight through. Didn't really jump around. We did, as you can see in the first 2 sessions, they're both on Chapter 1. We wanted to kind of ease students into it. We have, because there are 12 chapters and 16 sessions, I felt like we had enough time to do that. So the first 2 sessions will actually be over the same material, all from Chapter 1. And that's helpful, I think, for a couple reasons. First is we know Chapter 1 is a pretty broad chapter. It covers a lot of different information. And so we're giving them a couple weeks or a couple class sessions to kind of dig into that chapter. It also will give instructors and students a couple weeks to get more comfortable with the Learn Smart activities for Chapter 1, which we've stretched over both of those sessions, as well as giving people some time to make sure they have access to the textbook and are able to access that, and hopefully heading off some of those kind of issues we know we all have with students that, we're 2 weeks into the course and we still don't have our textbook. At least we're slowing down for those first couple sessions and hopefully easing people in to that kind of thing. So, so session 1 doesn't have a full discussion board. It just has the introduction discussion board and an orientation quiz, but then that will extend into session 2. And from there on, you can, again, I'll just scroll down a little bit so you can see and what the layout looks like here. Pretty straightforward, just going through first 4 chapters and then an exam. And then after that, we'll do another 4 chapters and an exam with different assignments spread out. I tried to look at the layout of the course in terms of not having everything due at once. Tried to pace it a little bit so you can see we try not to do too much in any one session. We don't have 4 different papers due in one session or whatever. Almost every session is going to have some Learn Smart activities and a discussion board, and they're going to have to read a chapter, so that's pretty standard. Anytime there's a chapter being covered, we're going to have those activities in there. They may also have a paper due, like in session 3, they have all those things we mentioned before, plus the first reflection paper. And then the next session, they're going to have another reflection paper. And in the summer, that's going to add up, but I don't think there's much you can do about that when you're doing 2 sessions at once. That's going to be true of every class. So some sessions are going to be a little fuller than others in the summer because you're going to have 2 of them. But the week of the first exam, we also have that first major paper due, the intercultural experience paper, which really, as we know, relates to session 3. And there's a note in session 3 talking about, now's the time to get started on this assignment and get working on it. And then we have it due in session 6 along with exam 1. Scroll down a little bit more so you can see again just how it's kind of laid out here. We get into a next set of sessions into exam 2 then. And the next final set of sessions here, and then finally exam 3. Nothing really overly complicated. It's a pretty straightforward layout, taking each chapter at a time and sprinkling the different assignments in throughout here. And again, just trying to spread out the work a little bit so it's not so overwhelming in any given class session or any given week of the semester. Maybe this might be a decent time to mention, or a good time to mention, that the kind of philosophy that I took in developing this class that may be a little bit different from the previous iteration of the class is that we did try and strip it down a little bit and simplify it a little bit. There was a lot going on in the last class session, and they took advantage of a lot of great technologies that are available in Blackboard, which is great. We had, as well recall, had blogs and a group project and things. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with those things, I did want to, I think, simplify it a little bit, simplify the process the students were engaging in, so that they could focus a little more on the content. And some of those things, while they're good, didn't necessarily relate specifically to any of the course objectives or anything like that. So I really tried to focus on what are the course objectives calling for, and what's the best way to lead students to that, which is why, again, we had an emphasis on the reflection papers as opposed to the blogs, for example. And the group project, while we all know there's value in a group project, I don't know that maybe the best for beginning students who are taking maybe their first online class, which is often the case in a 102 class. We know we have a lot of newer students, and if they're taking a lot of online classes, I think they're probably going to get into a lot of group projects later on in their course curriculum. For example, I know the 211 class that we run for the pro-comm majors, and for anybody else wants to take it, but out of our region, includes a group project. And by that time, they've probably had a couple of online classes, so they're not struggling quite as much with just the basic technologies of Blackboard and the basic technology in general. They're more into or they're more capable of handling some of the more advanced things like group projects. So for those reasons, we just kind of, again, we meaning I, just kind of wanted to strip down the course a little bit and simplify it in some ways. So that's why you don't see a lot of those types of things in here. I mean, it's just kind of a pretty straightforward, simple class, but I think it really brings the focus back onto the content for that course. Okay, so good. Now that we're getting rid of David, that'll help. He's such a talker. I'm just kidding. David's one of my best friends, so I just like to give him a hard time. So, questions about the calendar or the course layout? Okay. Well, I'm not hearing any. If you want to raise your hand, so to speak, quickly here, we can do that. But otherwise, I think, Sarah, if I'm reading this right, we'll get into Blackboard a little bit. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm gonna jump in there.
Yep.
Okay. Hopefully you can see my Blackboard screen.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Josh. Let's start with session 1. And you can just talk me through where you want me to go.
Okay. Again, nothing overly complicated about the layout, especially if you've seen. Probably won't surprise you that this looks a lot like the COMM102 class, since I developed it as well. The layout's pretty similar here, but I think it's a system that works well for us. You have the required components here on the front page, and the overview, and then the objectives and content laid out, and then 2 folders beneath that for the learning activities and the assignments and assessments, and then a summary and overview of the next session. Pretty standard things. And this is I think You'll see a consistent format throughout the course, and that's good. Students will know where to go and how to get there and things. So, and there were enough activities and assignments and assessments that having them all on one screen I felt was going to be maybe a bit overwhelming and confusing. So that's why we broke them up into the respective folders. So yeah, if you want to go ahead and click on Learning Activities there, and we'll get into that folder. In the Learning Activities folder, in each session, you're going to find the required reading. And this one has the course orientation as well, that we want them to go through a couple different things and complete a couple of different tasks here, reviewing the syllabus, reviewing the calendar, reviewing the graded course assignments, which are in the syllabus, but also in a separate document in the Resources tab. So if they ever want to review that, we've included those in the Resources tab as well. And then the rubrics are available from day one, both for the not just the instructors, but for the students as well in a PDF format, so they can see exactly how these assignments are going to be graded. And then we want them also to get to know their instructor a little bit, to personalize the course, so we can direct them to the instructor tab and have them view that. And so we got the little course orientation there. And then we're going to give them some instruction on how to access some of the different things with the readings. That link that Sarah's going to take us to now, the Interpersonal Communication Second Edition, is going to take them to the, I think it's to the resources area, where it's going to, or is it just take them to a Google Doc? Is that right, Sarah? Or it takes them straight to Vital Source?
They should be good. They should be in the resources area. So I'm gonna. This is their Vital Source book. So let me actually show you. Here's resource. It pops up in just a pop-up screen, but right behind here you see I'm now on the resources page. So here, in each of our included ed courses, we have the Vital Source version of the ebook available here in the resources area. So you'll see here there's a little bit of verbiage about what is this book exactly and why do I have two versions of the same exact ebook. And the reason is that the Vital Source book allows for some of these nice features like offline reading on a tablet or an iPhone, Android, things like that. And here we do have a Google Doc that says to learn more about using this version. And we have a student version of this quick start guide. And you'll see here some hot links to different features and help and what to do when something happens. It's all on here. We also have an instructor version of this quick start guide because there's a little bit of a different setup process for instructors that's located in the instructor resources area. We can show a little bit later. So that's the student version of the help guide. So anytime they want to read with this book, it's just going to open up the entire book. So what I was just showing you earlier that I closed out, here's my pop-up window. And I have the entire book here, and I can click through, each part of the book, and I can go to specific pages and chapters and things like that. I also have the option to highlight text, and then once I do that, you'll see here I have no notes or highlights. But if I made notes in here, or if I had highlights on things I wanted to remember or anything like that, so here I can add a note or I can highlight the text. And then those will all be saved right here in this highlight section, which is really nice to remember those things that you wanted to look at later. They all populate right there. So that's the Vital Source text. Josh, anything else you want to say about that?
Nope.
Okay.
The first part in that class session, in session 1, was really just taking them to that tutorial and to the instructions for accessing the Vital Source version of the text.
Okay, let me get back to session 1.
Okay. That won't appear in every class session, really just this first session, that particular item, to get them started on that. And then you'll see there's an instruction to read Chapter 1, and explains to them that they have 2 versions and how they can access that. And then the folder below that contains the chapter readings that will be in Connect, which is a little different look and a little different, it's broken up a little differently, and I'll let Sarah explain that.
Okay, so this is why we try to really explain to students, why do I have 2 versions of the same book? And it's really because the publisher book is what we try to gear them towards, because that's where their Learn Smart activities are, and those are based on the textbook readings. And then obviously for online reading, that's where all of this is located through the publisher links. And here you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4 in the Chapter 1 ending. These are all the headers that are located in Chapter 1. And it'll take them directly to these parts of the book. So it's actually really nice to just be able to jump right there. If they're using the Vital Source book, like I said before, it's just going to go right into the beginning of the book every time. It's not going to go to Chapter 1 or 2 or 3. But this way, with the publisher ebook, we have it built out in here through each session. They'll have their chapter readings that are specific to that session, and it'll open up just like this. They do have some options up here too. They can search, and they can also highlight notes, and just like we have with the Vital Source, they have some options in this one as well, which is nice. Anything else on this, Josh?
No, not specifically, unless somebody has some questions.
Okay, any questions? Okay, so the nice thing about Connect for students and instructors is you'll see right here this yellow Return to Blackboard button. So at any time when they're in Connect, it will just seamlessly take them over into this area, into this environment, which is separate from Blackboard. But it won't seem like it because they really just are jumping right in. So this button will always be there so that they know they're not in Blackboard anymore, but if they want to get back, they're just going to click that button. So that's what I'm going to do.
Okay. Yep. And then we're right back into session 1. You'll see I also included a video, and there are various videos in here and in the course, and I use them pretty liberally, the videos in the course, and I, probably more than maybe some people would like. I mean, remember the videos are optional; they're not, 100% required for the instructor to use or for the student to view. There's really not any material in the exams that are directly tied to the videos or anything like that, but I do think they can be a valuable source. Not only of information because people have different learning styles and some people like to see things in a different format, but also I think just adding a different perspective. We all know that textbooks are written by people and they're not gospel. I mean, every one of us, probably in every textbook we've ever read, has seen something that we're like, I'm not so sure about that, or that I agree with that. So just providing a different perspective to students can be important as well, and just a different way to look at something or to think about something. So I use videos pretty liberally in here, sometimes to reinforce an idea more specifically through content. This is sort of like a video version of what you might find in a book. Sometimes they're not as directly content oriented, and I have based on comments that we got from some of the milestones, which were great. Started going back and looking at some of the videos again, both to see whether or not they were worthy of inclusion, but also then to add some more specific and pointed discussion questions for the students to think about if they were to view those videos. Is this really, is the point of this video really being made clear to the student, and so that it's not just entertainment, but they can see that there really is some discussion point here or something some direction I'm trying to point them in with the video. So I think every session, as far as I know, has at least one video. Some of them have 3 or 4, I think, but I think we've had good experience using videos in the 201 class, just in terms of process too, that the having them embedded in the course like this has worked well. I haven't heard any issues of that, as opposed to, when you link out. Of course, videos will die at times, so we'll need to review that on a regular basis, but we do that every semester. As we do the course packaging, we make sure all the videos are working and things, but I think the process of bringing up the video tends to work pretty well because they're embedded in the course. It doesn't take the student to another site or anything like that, and they tend to be pretty functional. So. Okay. So the learning activities folder is going to, in every session, going to have what they're supposed to read. It's going to point them toward the chapter or the reading, and it's going to include any kind of videos, or sometimes there's a web link for a website or an online quiz if it's just for fun, not a quiz, but it's just for the sake of fun type quiz, or for some other learning activity type quiz. not for points, but just for their own edification. Those would all be included in the learning activities folder of every session. And then once the student has worked through all those learning activities, then they would go to the assignments and assessments folder. If you want to click in there, this is where they're going to find anything that's deliverable for that session. All the discussion boards will be linked here, and the discussion boards will be outlined in this area, and then it'll take them directly to the discussion board area for that particular DB. Any other kind of deliverable for that class session, including in this one, the email exercise and assignment submission exercise, which are carried over from the other, there were lots of valuable things in the other course, so I want to make that clear. It wasn't just that we totally just trashed the other course, and you'll see some familiar discussion board topics and different things in here that we've carried over. There was some good stuff in that last course, including some of these orientation activities, and we refer back to these at different times in the course. They're in their first paper submission, and all the paper submissions we point them back to. Hey, if you don't remember how to do this, go back to the session 1 assignments and assessments folder and review that assignment. There's a little orientation quiz. This is I think it's 5 bonus points or something we give them for taking this quiz, and it just goes through the syllabus and the course calendar to kind of give them an incentive for reviewing that and reading it over. Then the first 4 sessions all have this next link about the Learn Smart activities. We included that in the first 4 sessions just so it would be hammered home for students. This is how you do the Learn Smart activities, and this is how they're graded and things like that. So we wanted to give them some information. And then the final link there will take them to the actual Learn Smart activities. And I think we're going to be able to show you that now. So you can click in there. So again, the Learn Smart activities are through Connect. This is what they call an adaptive learning environment or adaptive learning activity, meaning that as students answer questions, it will take whether they got it wrong or right and adapt the next question to that. If they seem to have a concept pretty well in hand, that they've got a good grasp of it because they've answered several questions correctly and confidently, because they put their confidence level on each item as well, then if they've done that, then they'll be able to move on to a different topic. But if they haven't, if they're not sure about the topic that they've presented or the questions that they've answered, or they got several wrong, then it will keep circling back to that topic and giving them more questions about that topic. So that's what they mean by adaptive learning tool. And we've got it set up so that you can adjust the number of questions, or really more the matter of how much time they're going to be spending on each of these. And I think we have it set up that we anticipate they're going to spend about 20 minutes per session in the Learn Smart activities. So we could go higher than that. We could have gone lower than that, but we thought that was a good fair amount for this type of course, that they spend about 20 minutes each session. So question comes up. Sometimes it's multiple choice. Sometimes it's fill in the blank. This one happens to be a matching. So the student would answer the question however they need to, in this instance matching the different items with each other. And then they would also indicate how confident they are in their answer. If they know they got it right, or they're almost 100% sure, then they would indicate that. Or if they want to just indicate that they were guessing, then they would do that. And again, that's part of the adaptive part of the learning activity here. But and then when they submit their answer, it's going to tell them, this is what you got right, or this is what you got wrong. This is where you can review more information. Yeah. And this is where it came from the textbook. It'll link them directly to the textbook. And if they're not sure about an answer, they can go in and learn. So again, that's why this is, for all these reasons, this is why it's not a straight, quiz, for example. It's not a matter of how many got right or wrong. It's a matter of participation. If they do the activity and they do it all the way through and they complete the activity, then they get those points for that. If they complete, half or 75%, then they get that many points for participating in it that much. But yeah. Well, questions about Learn Smart. This is a new kind of portion of this class, and maybe something that some of you haven't seen before. Okay. If there are no questions, then about, okay. Oh, it's in the one-on-one class. Okay, this shows you, we don't offer one-on-one online out of our region, so this shows you how familiar I am with what's going on in that class, especially now that David's program chair. I really don't have to focus on it that much. So, again, it's one of the portions of the class that I'm most excited about. I think it's going to be a good tool. If you'd asked me, should all classes be included and should we use this digital book, I don't know that I would, say yes, 100%. We should do this for every class, but since we're using it, and it's been made clear to us that this is the direction we're going to be going, I think taking advantage of this is one of the better routes for us. I think it's an interesting tool and a neat tool for students and for instructors to see how students are grasping the concepts. Looks like we got questions, so let me read this real quick and see what we got.
I can take that question, Josh, if you want.
Sure.
Yeah, Lee, you're correct, and this is something kind of college-wide that we're making a shift towards. So once we did the Service Pack 13 upgrade in Blackboard, the Speed Grader app that's a part of the courses now where teachers can use the inline grader, meaning you don't have to download documents anymore. It is not compatible with RTF files anymore. So that one we'll need to change that, Josh, and I'll make a note of that here. With that first one of those orientation activities, the assignment submission activity. We'll just need to upload
I've got it on all
the
other assignments. I guess I didn't go back and review the orientation assignments, but you're right. That's a change that was made, and I think it's going to be that. I think all the other assignments should indicate doc or docx.
Yes, they definitely should. So, yep, that was one that we didn't catch. So thank you, Lee. We will update that. Okay, so Josh, if you want to move on to a session where we have something different than session one, an assignment, a paper, something like that, just let me know.
Yeah, session 4 would be representative there, I think. It's going to include everything we just talked about. The only real addition is that's the first reflection paper. So if we go to the assessment or assignments and assessments, you'll see that the first reflection paper is included in there. So again, each reflection paper gives the instructor a couple of options, at least 2 or 3 options for each paper. The papers, just generally speaking, are going to be 1 to 2 pages. They're not intended to be overly cumbersome. They're just intended to get the students talking about a particular concept or applying that concept a little more in depth. And so each reflection paper will have 2 or 3 options that the instructor will choose one of them and then delete the other 1 or 2 options before the students ever see it. So the instructor will make that choice, gives them a little bit of freedom in choosing, and and then they will submit those. And I think again all of that should say either the doc or docx. I think made that change on all the other assignments moving forward. So. And then they just submit it as a regular assignment. That gives you an idea of what that looks like. And sorry, I'm trying to read the comments here too. Okay. Good. There is graded work submitted in week 1 and 2, but not very much. The Learn Smart activities, they will have 2 weeks, or 2 class sessions. It would really only be 1 week in the summer, but they'll have 2 class sessions to complete the Learn Smart activities for Chapter 1, which would be both Session 1 and 2. Session 1 does not have a graded discussion board assignment. Session 2 is the graded discussion board assignment for Chapter 1. And then the only assignments that are graded in Session 1 really are bonus. I think they get a couple bonus points for the orientation quiz and maybe a couple bonus points for, I can't remember, for the email assignment or the, it's been a while since I was in session, since we did Session 1. So nothing overly dramatic in Session 1 in terms of points because, again, we want to ease students in a little bit there and give them an opportunity the first couple sessions anyway to kind of get comfortable in the class. We have, if I'm not mistaken, for session one, I mean, for NWs, we have the first 2 weeks of class, I think, except in the summer, which might be 1 week there, but then they would include session 2, which would have a graded assignment as part of that. And typically, and it may vary from region to region, but ours, as long as we have something that we can include in the grade book, which you should be able to for the orientation quiz in that session 1, then that also gives us something there. But I think we would be okay as long as we have something in session 2, because that would cover us both in a 16-week session by having something due within the first 2 weeks, and in the summer session or an 8-week session would be within the first week, because that's going to include session 1 and 2, of course. And somebody correct me if I'm mistaken on that, but that was my thinking there. And while we're thinking about that, and if somebody wants to comment on that, that's fine. You can see the reflection paper rubric that's available there. Nothing overly complicated. We'd try to make the rubrics fairly similar in format so that people would kind of see what they're, or get familiar with that. But that particular rubric is for the reflection paper. Again, they're worth 20 points apiece. Heavily weighted toward the thoughtful reflection portion, but also supporting the, again, the one of the course objectives for this course has to do with writing specifically, so we wanted to give attention to that as well. Okay. If there are no questions about that kind of stuff, then I think the next stop may be session 6, which would be the first exam, which will give you an idea what the exams are going to look like. In the learning activities in the session for the exam sessions, you're just basically going to find a bunch of links to, okay, Sarah's going to go back there, and you're just essentially going to find links to the different class sessions where they can review these concepts, and so again, just linking back to those different class sessions. So no new material specifically during those weeks, but just links back to the other sessions. And then we'll go back to the exams. Jennifer, to answer your question, I think we could probably include some sample papers. If we had some that people wanted to offer up, I wouldn't be opposed to including some sample papers. It's probably not a bad idea at all. So, you can see the intercultural experience there, the assignment, and that to do in that class session. We can go back in a second and show you where we bring it up so that we're getting started on that assignment. But exam 1 is what we wanted to go to specifically here. The instructions there, as you can see, indicate that the chapters that are going to be covered are chapters 1 through 4, that there are 75 multiple choice and true-false items worth a total of 1 point each. So there's a time limit, 75 minutes, and it needs to be completed by the end of that session in session 6. We did do forced completion on this, so that they have to do it the first time. If they get logged out or get knocked out, then they're going to need to be let back in by the instructor. And but we did do a forced completion, so that they had to do it in that first sitting once they get in there. So, Sarah, if you want to go ahead and get into the exam, or so we can look at the exam. You get nothing too elaborate here, or nothing too crazy. There is a pool for each exam. I think this is the smallest pool of 92 questions. The others are somewhere between 92 and 97, I think, maybe 95, 97. So there are a pool of questions that are being drawn. The 75 questions for that exam will be drawn from that pool. So not everybody will have the same questions for the exam, but they're all multiple choice or true false from that pool of questions. All drawn from the publisher's test bank, but I selected them. I didn't just grab every multiple choice and true false question. I grabbed the ones that I thought were good questions, and so but we do have a pool that we're drawing from. we can discuss. I mean, the way it's set up right now is that if you want to look at the, if we could go to the test options, I guess, Sarah, and look at some of those maybe. I think right now it's set up to all show at once, and we can look at the options and how it's set up and and discuss that. Again, I have set force completion. We have the timer set for 75 minutes. The instructor can set the display dates and due dates and things like that based on their own course. We have the test showing their submitted answers once they submit, and then it is randomizing the questions, again drawn from a pool, but also randomized. You see there. So, and it is shown all at once. They'll have all the questions displayed at once. So you can consider those options, and we can see how we feel about that. Yeah, that's a good point. That we do all have different kind of expectations, slightly different expectations when we grade. So, you know, even within the construct of a rubric, we're all going to be looking at slightly different things. So, each instructor may want to have their own samples. I guess if they're just starting out, we can maybe provide some examples for them or something. But that may be something we may need to look at for the future. Of course, instructors, my understanding is that instructors can add things. I mean, if an instructor had samples they wanted to add, I would think that would be a problem or be in violation of the statewide standard or whatever. But as a statewide course, that's something we might be able to add as we move forward here and as we get a collection of suitable sample papers. Questions or comments about the exams? Or again, there are 3 of them. They're all set up just like this. They all come from a pool, and they're all set up with these same options. Yeah, if you didn't see that in the chat area, Charles asked if instructors would have the option of disabling the timer on exams based on a disability services accommodation, and yeah, certainly the answer is yes, as Sarah indicated. That's something that we would have to, honor, of course. Sarah, if you want to jump back to, I think. Sorry.
Yeah, I was looking for where we have the prompt for to begin their intercultural experience paper.
I believe it's in session 3.
Okay, in the learning activities?
Yes. Maybe. Let's find out.
I couldn't remember either.
No. It's
okay.
in the assignments and assessments, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, here it is.
There. Okay. So basically just the same assignment description for the intercultural experience paper, except this is where we're getting them started, both as a prompt for the student but also for the instructor to remind them, hey, this is something we need to be discussing. And that we'll have that kind of prompt in the instructor's manual as well, which I'm working on. The instructor's manual is not quite complete, but we want to do a session-by-session breakdown with prompts and reminders, and still that's a work in progress. Should have it done maybe not this week because of the Program Chair Conference, which I'm sure you're all excited about. We'll see you all tomorrow probably at this thing, and you can all give me your personal lashings at that time at the conference over the next couple of days. But hopefully early next week we'll have that instructor manual complete as well. And as we discussed, Sarah and I were just discussing, we'll have the full manual available, but then we're also going to make this available in about 3 or 4 different places. We're going to put a condensed version with just the session-by-session prompts and things in a PDF format and put it into the resources. I'm also going to include that as part of or the mentor, not mine necessarily, whoever the mentor is can include that in their email to each of the instructors at the beginning, or prior to the semester, to give them those, and we just want to keep that information in front of the instructors as well. But this will be a nice prompt, I think, for the students to begin thinking about it and understanding that assignment, and also for the instructor to remember to bring it up and discuss it with the students and let them know. So, I mean, those are the major components. I mean, everything else is kind of on repeat, so to speak. I mean, it's different material, obviously, but that gives you it's not going to look incredibly different in a lot of the different sessions. So, what else can we show you? What else can we tell you about?
Maybe I'll just quickly go through the instructor resources area just so they kind of know what's
Okay.
going to be in there. Oh, and Jennifer just had a question.
Okay. Yeah, no group project in this version of the class. Again, I was talking about it a little earlier. I think you came in a little later, Jen. That's fine. But kind of step back from some of those assignments and try to focus a little on what's really discussed in the course objectives. We talked a lot about writing, but not necessarily about a group project. And I think there's a lot of value as we can all relate to in a group project. But for this particular class, wanted to focus a little more on being content-driven and kind of corralling students toward the content itself. And I think that's something that might be, in my personal opinion, and since I was designing class, it's just kind of how I developed it, but that might be something that's a little easier for students to take on at a later class, maybe a 200 level class. And at this level, a lot of students, when they're taking this class, are just going to be just starting to get to know Blackboard and trying to get their head around the basic technology and what it means to take an online class. So just kind of wanted to simplify things and streamline the course a little bit, focus a little more on writing, specifically on writing assignments and the content of the course. So.
I'm hopping over to the instructor guide that will be posted in the instructor resources area. I haven't attached it in there yet, but I just wanted to show that quickly. That this will be one of the, hopefully you can see it. This will be what we will ask instructors to kind of go through and make sure their course is ready to go. There is a pairing process that occurs here to make sure that students are able to access the Connect links. That the course will have to be paired, and each individual instructor will have to do that. And here is the information on that and all kinds of guides here to explain some different things that occur with Connect and how those things are synchronizing with Blackboard, and then additional help options there. So I just wanted to point that out, that will be in every course.
Okay. Lee, I did see your question, and I wanted to jump back up there and touch on that just for a second. Lee mentioned she understands the emphasis of the reflection papers, but is a little concerned about the number and the relatively low point value. Yeah, I mean, I have the same kind of feeling in some ways. I think you're right. Some students aren't going to do all of them, and that's certainly okay. Is it going to kill their grade to skip one or two of them? No. I mean, you know, they may notice, but it's not totally going to kill their grade. But at the same time, if they skip all of them, that's going to be that's going to be a letter grade plus off of their grade if they just don't do them at all. And when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, you know, it's not really that different from the blog assignment in the old class, which is a fine assignment. I mean, I use journals in my face-to-face classes. I'm sure a lot of people do, in some way to get them to reflect and apply these concepts in their own lives, get students to do that, and so really just wanted to take that blog assignment and give it a little different format, that may be something a little easier for students to kind of submit, and also for instructors to grade. I think we had some issues with instructors understanding how to grade the blogs, and I mean in a literal sense, but also in a, you know, didn't know how to get in really and view the blogs all that well, but also in a sense of, you know, how should we be evaluating these different blogs? Is it just if they did it, then they get all the points, or whatnot? And so I don't think the point value will be all that different from the blogs as I recall, but just a little different format for those types of things. So does that answer your question at all, Lee, or your concern? Okay. And while we're in there, Sarah, you may just want to, if you want to look at the resources area, just to there's not a great deal that'll surprise anybody in there, but just to show what's available. Again, we've included an overview of the graded course assignments, which is basically the same as what's in the syllabus, but it's there. It's easy for them to see, and that's what you don't have to open that. It's just really what's in the syllabus anyway, but a little more detail, but not much. Again, just access for the students there. It does have the course rubrics, which in this version are in PDF, because this is what the students will see. So they're just PDFs here, so the students can see exactly, what is it that I'm being graded on before the assignment ever takes place. There are also links to this attached to each assignment. All the papers have the rubrics linked to them and different things. And the instructors will also have a doc or docx version of the rubrics available in the instructor resources, but we wanted the students to be able to see them and understand what they're being graded on. Let's see, what else is in the resources area? Anything worth? I mean, there's lots of stuff in there, but I think we've already touched on some of it. So, yeah, then they had the vital source version of the textbook, which we already talked about. The library, yeah, the rest of this is standard online course inclusion, library resources, hippocampus, and things. So, the only other area that I thought, if you wanted to look at it real quick, again, there's nothing groundbreaking in there, but the discussions area would just give you an overview of what the discussion boards look like. And again, these are going to look familiar. A lot of these are carryovers from the previous course, so maybe reworded slightly, but really carried over a lot of the different discussion boards, I think. I don't think there'll be anything here that's too unrecognizable. Some of we did some shuffling, with maybe moved one of the old discussion boards into one of the reflection paper possibilities and put something else in as a discussion board. Most of the time if I did that, it was probably because we had something that we just have to have as a discussion board in order to satisfy the course objectives and to stick with the SAM and things. But that's, Sarah, can you think of anything else we need to review or show? Or
No, I don't. I mean, unless anybody has something specific that we maybe didn't cover enough or wanted to look more in depth, we've given you a pretty basic overview of everything here, and hopefully you've already had time to go in and look yourself more closely at some of these. But if anybody has anywhere where you feel like you'd like to see some more, that's completely fine. We've got time. Well, there's a question here, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, this is my opinion. Again, it has nothing to do with being course developer, but I think Chapter 12 is kind of a hard one to place in some ways. It's another one of those that does go through a lot of the different chapters. I mean, it involves a lot of different things, but I think it's just, honestly, it's not a whole chapter in most textbooks, is it? That a lot of, I think a lot of instructors or a lot of writers include what they kind of know best, or stick with what they know, and this, I think deception happens to be Corey Floyd's kind of area of expertise, if I'm not mistaken. So, but are you saying move it in the course, or move it in the actual textbook? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. You'd have to, maybe you could petition Corey, Dr. Floyd there, Lee, and make your case. Good. Any other questions that I can answer or information that I can share with you? Or?
Beth had asked about the availability of the course for summer, and yes, once Josh and I have gotten everything ready to go here and we've done a technical check on the course and all of our normal processes, the course will be released for summer and available to be used this summer.
Thanks,
Well,
James.
I just want to say, I think we're wrapping up here, and I just wanted to say thank you to Josh. Josh, you've done so much here, and it's been great working with you. And I mean, we've just got a great course here, and I'm really proud of what you've done, and I appreciate everybody coming to join us today. And Josh, if you have any closing comments, I'll give it to you.
No, I don't really have any comments. It's been a fun course to work on. I think we all recognize the importance of the course, not just from the content, but the breadth of the offering. And we have a lot of students that take this, and we want to be sure we get it right. So I think we're all very sensitive to that. So I appreciate the comments and the milestones and the support in putting the course together. So I'm looking forward to seeing some or all of you over the next couple of days.
Laundry to do, huh? Hey,
Yeah.
well, you guys have a great time in French Lick, and enjoy your long weekend. Hopefully you get some time to relax. So thanks again for coming. Have a great day, everyone.